virtual media conference hosted by the Ministry of Education. Today with me are the Minister of Education, the Honorable Anthony Garcia, and Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Dr. the Honorable Lovell Francis. But first, let us hear from the Minister of Education, who will speak on the prospects for the reopening of schools and the effect that will have on national and regional exams.
Good afternoon to our viewing audience. I'm very pleased to be afforded the opportunity to discuss with you some of the pressing issues that confront us. In fact, over the last few days, we have been bombarded by calls from parents and from students with respect to what is going on in the education system. In particular, a number of persons, number of parents and students want to know when school will reopen and how best they can adjust to this problem that we are now experiencing. As you are aware, it was announced by our Prime Minister that schools will remain closed in the first instance until April the 20th. April the 20th is next week Monday. And of course, if we look at the situation clearly, we would understand and realize that it is almost impossible, and I say almost impossible, for schools to be open on Monday next week. I have had the opportunity of dialoguing with a number of our stakeholders. I have spoken to the Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Mr. Bermudez. I've spoken to the Principal of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. I've spoken to the Minister of Education in Jamaica. I had a brief discussion also with the Minister of Education in Barbados. I've spoken to the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, who incidentally has education as part of his portfolio. I've also spoken to the President of the Primary School Principals Association and a number of parents and other stakeholders. Arising out of these discussions, it seems that it is almost impossible for schools to reopen before September. And I'm saying it seems to be virtually impossible. However, such a decision could only be taken after we have consultation with the Ministry of Health. And of course, Cabinet will be the ones to decide if we are going this way or not. However, it is important for us to level with the population and let the population know exactly what is the position. Where this is concerned, we will be taking a note to Cabinet, and as you know, Cabinet will be meeting on Thursday, and hopefully Cabinet will come to a decision. This will have an effect on exams, both local exams and regional exams. The local exam is the SEA. Of course, as you would know, originally, the SEA was scheduled to be written by our students, all 19,000 of them, on the 2nd of April. That did not happen. Depending on whenever school reopens, it will need, according to CXC, at least 1 month for the preparation so that our students will be able to write the exams in relative comfort. This will involve, first of all, the training of our supervisors. You know, the supervisors and the invigilators are very important if we want to ensure that there's a trouble-free exam. So whenever school reopens, then it will take at least 1 month before the students can write the exams. And then for the exams to be corrected, that will take another month. And for the placement to be done, as you know, the SEA is really a placement exam. That will take another month. So these are some of the things that we are looking at, and we will discuss this later. In terms of the regional exam, that is the CSEC and CAPE exams, which are administered directly by CXC, we need to look at it. Of course, CXC had made proposals, and they had presented proposals at a meeting of regional personnel who represented the various ministries of education, and they informed their ministers as they informed me with respect to whatever option we would want. I took a note to Cabinet last week, and the option that we really would like would be the second option, and that is that the exams should be held between June and July. However, because the situation is so fluid, it changes almost every day, it seems to me that that also is something that we have to look at again. Whereas the SEA is a local examination, and Cabinet will be the ones to decide when that exam will be held, the exams under the jurisdiction of CXC are really regional examinations, and therefore it will be the regional governments who will have to make representations to CXC. And this is why I have taken the pains to discuss with our regional governments. As I said before, I spoke with the Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, and I spoke with ministers Barbados and Jamaica. And also I have in my possession statements made by the Teachers Union in Barbados and also in Guyana. And these are things that we'll be discussing later on, so that we want to make sure that when our students sit these examinations, there will be no impediments, and the examinations will be done without any fault. In terms of what we have been doing to ensure that our students have access to an education, which is their right, we have put a number of things in place, and my fellow minister, Dr. Francis, will speak to that so that you can get an idea of the various platforms that the Ministry of Education has put in place so that our students and our parents will have access to these platforms so education can continue. A point I'd like to make before I hand over back to the chairperson: we view the school system as one that involves all our stakeholders, our students, our teachers, our parents, and all those persons who operate within. And therefore, a school is more than a building. I want to make this point. A school is more than a building. So while the buildings are closed, we at the Ministry of Education are doing everything possible to ensure that learning and the teaching continue. So towards this end, we have put things in place, as Dr. Francis will explain, so that our students will not be left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. The Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Dr. the Honorable Lovell Francis, will speak to the various initiatives the Ministry of Education has embarked upon to ensure learning and teaching can continue during this period. Dr. Francis.
Thank you, colleague. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
As my colleague just said, schooling is not centered on a building. Schools are their structures in the specific sense. But schooling is really about teaching, about educating. And we were very adamant that even though very early we understood that there was a risk that our schools would face a period of closure, that the core business of education would continue. So prior to that announcement being made that schools would be closed, we were already in the process of discussing how the system would keep going, even though we would not be able to have students report to schools physically. It's very fortunate that at the Ministry of Education, we have a very talented ICT team, and they had recently created 2 platforms that will become more important as our education system continues to evolve. One of them is called EMIS, which we've talked about with the media before, the Education Management Information System, which is playing a vital part and will continue to do so into the future. But the other, more critically right now, is called the School Learning Management System, which we've sort of shortened to the LMS, the Learning Management System. We, very early, at the junction of that announcement that schools would be closed, made a clarion call to our teachers that we need them to create content to host on this platform, because we wanted to ensure that the system would continue, if not seamlessly, then as close as possible to that during this period where students would not be in school. I am happy to inform that a number of our teachers, hundreds of our teachers, took up our call, took up the mantle of creating content that could be hosted on this platform. So that whereas a month ago, we'd have had almost no content on this very new school learning management system platform, I can report today that today we have content at every educational level. We have content for the ECCE level, we have content for primary, content for secondary, both CSEC and CAPE. Our platform allows not just the hosting of material that can be accessed by students and parents and other stakeholders, it also allows for virtual teaching. So it is possible to have someone organize a virtual classroom where a teacher can literally teach content and you can add students to a class and basically have them tune in to an ongoing class that is online. I would think that members of the public, if they were to log on to our site, would be tremendously impressed at what the ministry has been able to create in a very short time. What this means is that the Ministry of Education has gone from an organization that either had very little online content or could only do so by using platforms or software created by others, to an organization that is now creating its own software, that is creating its own platform, that has a very active and real basis for education to continue at this time, and that allows for thousands of students at all levels to receive an ongoing education every single day. In fact, before I left the ministry, I looked at some of the analytics on our learning management system platform, and there are not only users from this country, but there are users worldwide. Simply because the platform, we've left it open, it allows anyone to log in. I saw people from Europe, from Argentina, from America. They may be persons from the wider diaspora of Trinidad and Tobago, they may not be, but they are actively accessing the content that is available on that platform, and they're doing so on a daily basis, and it has allowed for education to keep going at this time. It would be a tragedy if in the midst of all of these difficulties, we allow the education system to grind to a halt. So one of the main reasons why we're here today is not just to give an update, to sensitize the public to the fact that education is ongoing, that even though we are nominally in the Easter vacation, the core business of education, which is teaching and learning, has not stopped. It is really to encourage citizens, to encourage stakeholders, to encourage parents, to encourage students at all levels to log into our platform. The platform is learn.moe.gov.tt. It is very easy to access. It is very easy to utilize. You would be amazed at this point at the amount of high quality educational content that is hosted there at all levels. You will be amazed at the number of tools that are available. For example, this morning we hosted a meeting with the Catholic Education Board of Management. We used our own platform. We have our own version of Zoom that doesn't charge you anything, that doesn't kick you off after an hour. We had a very long and very informative meeting. So it is not just that we have content. It is not just that we have courses. It is not just that we have the facility for active live streaming of teaching and learning. It is that we have a number of tools, a number of partners as well that allow for education across the entire gauntlet of the system. We need to ensure that members of the public are aware that this avenue for ongoing education exists and that they log into it. If there is one downside of this shift, it has been that when I checked this morning, out of maybe 250,000 students in this country, we only have 11,000 active users, a number of which are overseas. And I am thinking that part of the reason for that is that many citizens are simply not aware of what the ministry has done and the kind of avenues for ongoing education that we now allow. So I'm encouraging the public, I'm encouraging all stakeholders, I'm encouraging parents. We are even at this point looking at creating a guide so that parents who may not have had any kind of formal understanding of how to conduct a class at home, that they may receive some instructions on how to assist their young ones in terms of an ongoing system, that you log into our platform and that you make use of the content there. I have been saying on my social media platform, on my social media sites, that the future of education is now, that education must countenance, must utilize the technology available. We at the MOE have not been sitting on our hands. We have been at the forefront of trying to ensure that our system is modernized as quickly as possible. We have one or two drawbacks. We are cognizant of the fact that there are some areas of our nation that do not have widespread access to Wi-Fi. We are aware that some students may not have devices that they can use to access our materials. We are in active discussions with other ministries, for example, the Ministry of Public Administration, in terms of working on these issues. We have other stakeholders who are trying to partner with us in terms of trying to find devices for those students who do not now possess any means of going online to look at our material. We understand that these are significant concerns. We have taken up the mantle of working at solving them. We will do so as we go forward. But we are asking all those who can at this point to please log into our site, to make the best use of the material there, which is being updated literally on a daily basis. And it is really our intention to keep education going, because the business of education, the core business of education, which is teaching and learning, must never stop. Thank you, colleague.
Thank you very much. Members of the media, the floor is now open. Remember to identify yourself and the media house you represent before posing your question. And we want to give as many of you an opportunity to ask questions, but that means in our limited time, we will have to give each media house a chance to get a maximum of 2 questions in. And once we have completed the pool and time allows, I will come back to you. So let's keep this in mind as we begin taking your questions. The floor is now open. News source?
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good
Or good
day.
afternoon.
Sorry, good afternoon. Good afternoon to the panel. I've got, well, more than 2 questions, but I'll just ask these 2 questions. What measures, if you can elaborate on what measures are going to be put in place for both students and teachers that don't have the technical equipment? Because I've been hearing on teaching forums that there are teachers complaining that they themselves don't have laptops or tablets, so access to technical equipment at home. So what measures, if any, if you can elaborate on it, is being put in place for that? And if the minister could also, either Minister Garcia or Minister Francis could talk a little bit about what is meant to happen with tertiary education for the foreseeable future.
Okay. All right. I'll answer the first question. In terms of getting devices to teachers and students, the teachers are actually the easier part of the equation. We have laptops that are housed at schools, all schools across the country at the moment. And we were discussing just this morning the notion of getting those laptops to the teachers. So getting devices to all our teachers is not going to be difficult. The students, of course, present a much larger issue. At our rough estimate of the number of devices that might be needed, the number is tremendous. We are thinking maybe something like 60,000 students may not have devices. That's a very large number. That's going to be a very tremendous cost. We have been looking at our budget in terms of finding ways to get devices. We have been fortunate to have some stakeholders find ways for us. For example, we spoke with the Catholic Board of Education this morning, and they have started their own drive to get people to donate devices that they can then relay to students who don't have. We have received some assistance from UNICEF in terms of funding to purchase devices. So we have started the ball rolling, but as to ensuring that every single student gets a device, that will be something that we do procedurally and that Cabinet may have to have some say in. But we've already started the process. What I can say is, because of the way our system is constructed, basically, you can access our site and use it with full functionality with the simplest of devices, simply because the processing work, the real muscle of the work is actually done on our servers. It's not done on the phone. So the simplest, I don't want to use the word cheapest, but the cheapest device that you can access will be able to have the full functionality of our platform. But we intend to solve this problem going forward.
Okay. The question that has been asked by Ms. Barrett pertains to tertiary education. Now, you notice that during my opening remarks, I listed a number of persons, a number of stakeholders with whom I had discussions. Chief among those was the principal of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus, Professor Brian Copeland. We had a long discussion, and we really were exploring possibilities to ensure that our students who are in the tertiary education program are able to access education. What was revealed to me, and I was very happy to hear this, is that 94% of teaching is now being done online by the University of the West Indies. Of course, Professor Copeland told me that there are some hiccups where that is concerned, but they are trying their best to even that out so that in the not too distant future, perhaps the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus can have 100% teaching online during this period. We also have the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and I have been in contact almost on a daily basis with the vice chairman of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and again, UTT has embarked on online teaching so that our students in these areas are not left behind. YTEP, although it is not a tertiary education institution, but they are also ensuring that their lecturers, their tutors avail themselves of the technology that will allow those students and those trainees to be able to busy themselves during this time. MIC IT, this is one of the areas where a lot of work has been going on, and again, the chairman of MIC has informed me that online teaching has been an integral part of their operations. I mentioned earlier that I have been in discussions with a number of our stakeholders. I omitted to mention that an important stakeholder is the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. And we will be meeting with Tutor tomorrow. And the reason for this is we wanted to collate the views of all our stakeholders and present them to Tutor because, you know, Tutor not only being one of our major stakeholders, but Tutor has a legal responsibility to ensure the working conditions of teachers are met. So therefore, after we meet with our stakeholders, after we have had those discussions, we'll be putting forward to Tutor what is our position, and hopefully we'll have a very important, a very fruitful meeting tomorrow with Tutor.
Thank you very much, Minister. 98.1.
Good afternoon, ministers, and Stephen Cummings here from 98.1 FM.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Just two quick questions. How is the Ministry of Education treating with and the managing of the loss of physical classroom contact hours in the context of this whole business of distant learning? I think that we would want to hear a little more about how the system is going to work. And second question is, what is there in place for addressing the educational needs of special needs children in Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay. In terms of dealing with lost contact hours, I try to emphasize the point that even though schools were physically closed, the business of schooling, the business of teaching and learning had at no time had ceased. So whereas the notion is that children have been home for a number of weeks, we have been attempting from the very onset to keep that educating, that teaching and learning ongoing. So it is our intention, given the fact that we are uncertain as to when schools can physically open, that we keep the system going. So that is really our philosophy. We intend to ensure that teaching and learning never end, that students are able to access information at every level, that education can keep on going, and that we keep that business moving as long as this situation continues.
Thank you very much. Minister?
Yes, with respect to the meeting the needs of students who are special students, the crisis that now confronts us really has no bearing on what we have been doing before. For quite some time now, we at the Ministry of Education have recognized that our special students must be allowed to access the education which, again, is available to everybody. Our mantra is no child should be left behind. Towards this end, we had focus group consultations where stakeholders were able to come together, put forward their views, and as a result of that, we have compiled a document that will allow us to go forward. Some of the things that are in that document would be, one, to identify at least 3 schools in each education district that will cater specifically for children with special needs, our special children. Also, our teachers are being trained and retrained. We have a number of teachers in the system who are trained in the area of special education, and they will be able to impart that knowledge. And those who are not fortunate to receive that training, we want to ensure that they are trained and retrained. We are also engaging the active participation of our parents, because the parents are the first ones who would be able to provide information and provide support to these children. And we are meeting with our parents, our parent-teachers associations, all in an effort to ensure that our children with special needs are not left behind.
Thank you. AZP News.
Hi, good afternoon, Ministers. Prior Bihari, azpnews.com.
Good afternoon.
I just have 2 questions for Minister Garcia. One, there are reports that the parents of children who receive the school feeding program, that they are not receiving a grant, that there's a problem with the list of the Ministry of Education list, that it needs to be updated. Can you look into that? And secondly, in terms of, there's going to be a lot of online learning. Is the ministry looking maybe to increase the broadband width across the country? Is there any partnership there to help people work online? Those are my 2 questions.
Okay, let me deal with the school feeding program. The food cards, really. That program is being administered by the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. That ministry had asked the Ministry of Education to get from all principals names of students who are enrolled in the school feeding program. However, they have also asked the principals to identify the students who are most in need. I know that there are a number of students who receive school meals. However, there are some students who are more in need than others. We have 79,000 children who are enrolled in the school feeding program in Trinidad, 79,000. So obviously, we have to, in the initial stages, to identify those students who are more in need. And therefore, the principals, in compiling that list, they were asked to identify those who are most in need. That list, or those lists, were sent to the members of parliament, all 41 members of parliament, and they were asked, after they perused the list, to present food cards to parents, first of all, who reside in the specific constituency, and of course, who, in their estimation, are most in need. Let me give you my own example. There is one school in my constituency where I had to confront a list of over 200 students. That list was presented to me because it's a big school. The food cards that we received obviously did not allow me to select every student. And therefore, there will be some students whose parents would not receive the food cards. But we have been assured that once we do the work and we provide the data, there will be more food cards available. So I want to tell all those parents, please rest assured that the Ministry of Education, or the ministries, both of Education and Social Development and Family Services, are doing everything so that our students would be able to benefit and have something that will allow them to move forward. Thank you.
All right. On the question of bandwidth for schools, prior to this COVID-19 pandemic, we were already in the process of increasing the bandwidth at our secondary schools, and we had signed agreements with third-party providers to do so for all of the primary schools. So those processes were already underway. In terms of dealing with those students who, in this period now, will not have access, we're actually talking, as I said before, with the Minister of Public Administration, who is going to be working with the Telecommunications Authority to see if we could create, I'll use a bad term, some hotspots in those areas where there isn't Wi-Fi to ensure that there is access. So it was already on stream. We just have to change focus now in terms of getting to the communities where there isn't access, and we are already in the process of finding ways to accomplish that.
Thank you very much. Annalisa.
Good afternoon, ministers.
Good afternoon.
Ministers, I'm interested in finding out, because of the fact that SE is not going to take place as it should, that cohort of incoming students who would now come into the system in September, that movement, that free movement is going to be hampered. So what do we tell parents at this point? And secondly, I know that teachers up to last week were being asked to account by the Ministry of Education for their time and to provide, I guess, I'm not sure if it's evidence of what they've done so far in terms of providing e-learning material. So can you tell us if the situation has been resolved, ministers?
I'll take number 2, right?
Okay, Annalisa. Let me, first of all, state that since this situation is so fluid, we cannot give a definite date for the commencement of the third term. What I said earlier, in talking with our stakeholders, the various stakeholders with whom we have been speaking, the view is that the third term, which is supposed to start next week, Monday, and end on the 3rd of July, that third term should be abolished, and instead we have from September to December, September 1st to December the 14th, all the activities that usually are associated with that third term, those activities will take place. And that will include the essay exam, the CSEC exams, and the CAPE examinations. But again, that has to be a decision that will be taken by Cabinet. I have a note that will be discussed at the level of Cabinet on Thursday, and only then I'll be able to give a definite decision where that is concerned.
Minister Lovell.
Could you repeat the second question, please? I kind of lost the grain there.
Annalisa.
The second question.
The e-learning material. Have teachers been asked to account, and if, because I know that was an issue last week, in terms of what they've provided, in terms of the material and their time, has that been resolved?
Okay, the question of having teachers account, that's a very strong term. Basically, we want to do a survey of what is happening educationally. We are aware that we have a platform that provides a lot of material, but when we look at it, we have maybe 11,000 users at any given time. We have other partners like Pennacool, they have large numbers. We know that some teachers are doing things by Microsoft. We know that some teachers are doing things by WhatsApp. We really intended to do a survey to get a fairly accurate understanding of what is happening in the system. We also are aware that there might be some teachers who are not doing much. They might be in the minority. But it is not really that the ministry was calling anybody to account. We were asking our partners in education, which of course includes the teachers, to give us a sense of what they were doing to allow us to make the kind of policy decisions that we needed to make. So I think that any discrepancy in terms of what the ministry's intention was and how that intention was viewed by some stakeholders within the system, I think that has been cleared up, or it should be cleared up by the end of this week.
But just to add, I think it has been cleared up because I spoke also to the principal of the Primary School Principals Association, who informed me that in speaking with his colleagues, he understands that it was not a directive. It was simply to get information, as Dr. Francis said, from the teachers so that it will guide us in moving forward. We want to make sure that no child is left behind, and if some teachers are doing certain things during the vacation period, we want to really compliment them, but at the same time, we want to ensure that there's equity throughout the system so that we don't want one area of the education system to benefit where we neglect others. And this is why we wanted to compile the information, as much information as possible, so that in moving forward, we want to ensure that everyone is catered for.
Thank you, Ministers. I have a question from online. Will students have to repeat the school year, or will they move on come September?
All right, let me deal with this. Again, only on Thursday, when Cabinet makes a decision, then I will be able to give an exact answer to this question. But let me tell you some of the views that have been expressed. One of the things that we are looking at is that the third term, and I just mentioned that, will take place really from September the 1st. And therefore, all the activities, I'm just repeating myself for clarification, all the activities that take place during that third term will now take place from September to December. It means then that the new academic year will really start from January 2021. And that the implication of that would be then that there is the possibility of contracting or compressing 3 terms into 2 terms. So we'd have one term from January to April and the other term from mid-April to July. This is not new. We have had precedents where this is concerned in 1964 when the academic year was changed from January to September. The new school year started in September, but we had to compress 2 terms from January to July. Those 2 terms, we had to compress them, we had to compress the 3 terms into 2 terms so that in September you had the beginning of a new academic year. So what will happen if this goes forward would simply mean that the students, all the students will remain in school for September to December. All the students will remain in schools in their respective classes. In the Standard 5, they will have their examinations. In the Forms 5 and 6, they will have their examinations, both CAPE and the CSEC. And the new school year would start in January. And again, as I keep saying, with this start in January, the students will have 2 terms in that new school year. And when September comes, then we will go back to the ordinary system, where school and the academic year will start in September.
Thank you very much. I-95.5.
Good afternoon, all. Whitfield Turner from I-95.5 FM.
Good afternoon.
I actually have an exam paper worth of questions, but I'll try and pull a couple of them.
Whitfield,
first up,
please.
is there an e-safety
Hold on,
policy and procedures
Hello?
to help teach?
Whitfield, 2 questions, please.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Has the Ministry of Education prepared e-safety policies and procedures to help teachers mitigate the risk and respond to concerns regarding online education? Have they been trained to teach students about safety on the internet? And is the Student Support Services Unit equipped to adequately assist students who may be exposed to online harm?
Take the first one, the second one.
You want him to repeat?
No,
Could
as
you?
to the first,
You
no,
want
no.
Go ahead.
As to the first question as to whether we have had trained teachers in terms of
The risks.
the risk of e-learning. We have been, as I said when I started talking this afternoon, we have sort of been preparing for this transformation for 2 years now. So our timetable may have been pushed up or pushed forward by COVID, but we've been looking at ICT in education for a while. Part of that has been training cohorts of teachers in terms of ICT in education, the ethics of online education, and all of that. So we have a significant number of teachers who have received training from the MOE in these areas, and I have great confidence that they will be very good at navigating what is before them and preparing students in all areas across this changing landscape. So we have been doing training for years. We have been training hundreds of teachers, significant cohorts of teachers, and I think that they will adjust and they will do what is required to ensure that system moves fairly seamlessly into this.
The second question is almost the same as the first question, except that it focuses more on the students, and our Student Support Services Division is fully equipped with trained personnel that will assist our students. We have guidance officers who play an important part in this whole system, and they'll be able to work along our students just to make sure that they are up to speed where this new technology is concerned. One of the things that COVID has forced us to do is to think forward. You know, in the past, we have been looking at online teaching, online learning, using the internet and using the technology that is available, but in some cases, we were moving forward gingerly. This conflict, this program, and what we have been seeing now is really telling us that we have to move much faster than we were doing in the past. And as such, we are well equipped. As Dr. Francis said, we have an IT department that is staffed by professional persons who have the knowledge and the experience to move us forward. And we'll embrace all those opportunities so that our students and our teachers will be able to benefit.
Thank you very much. Express.
Hi, good afternoon. Camille Hunt from the Express newspaper.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Francis, you spoke about getting Wi-Fi to areas that might not have internet connection. But in the interim, is any consideration being given to communicating with the internet service providers so these families who might have a reduced income, they can get internet access at a more affordable cost or perhaps have their bills waived?
We've actually been discussing with two of the main providers already. That's not really the purview of the Minister of Education. It's really more the purview of the Minister of Public Administration. So that minister is the person who will be doing more of that negotiating. But I can say that discussion has started already in terms of getting the ISPs to find innovative ways of allowing persons who don't have access right now to have access. The discussion has already started.
CNC3. Are we not hearing?
Hello. Good
Yes.
afternoon, ministers. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. We're hearing you now.
All right. Just a quick question as it pertains to the online platform.
Identify yourself, please.
We've attempted Jesse Ramley from CNC3 News.
Thank you.
Right. So we've attempted to visit the site, the online platform. Is it currently operationalized?
Fully operationalized.
Okay. And in terms of ensuring the safety of students online, have resources been allocated to ensure their safety as it pertains to cyberbullying, their data, their information? Have resources been allocated for that?
Yes.
Okay. Minister, we have a question. This person's daughter got an open scholarship, and got accepted to a university and wanted to know what was the process of accessing scholarship funds. I think the person was supposed to attend in September.
Well, first of all, the person must have a sponsor, and usually the sponsor would be a parent or perhaps a godfather. And that sponsor will have to show that the responsibility for the student's well-being is the responsibility of that person. And as a result, a contract has to be engaged, and the contract will be between the Ministry of Education on behalf of the government and the sponsor as one. Secondly, the student has to prove that he or she is enrolled at the university. And we need to get documents from the university, whichever university it is. I understand if this is a university in Canada, usually most of our students want to go to the University of Waterloo. So the university will send information to the Ministry of Education, which would say or which would verify that the student or the person is a bona fide student of the university. When this is done, then our scholarship department would send money through the various embassies so that the students would be able to access funds that will allow for the personal maintenance allowance that will allow the student to live properly, and also directly to the university in terms of tuition fees. So these are some of the areas that must be looked into. I know that there in the past have been some concerns about late payment of money, and we are working very closely where this is concerned. What we have noticed in the case of some students, they have not given to the Ministry of Education the information regarding whether they have changed courses or whether in fact they are still enrolled in the Ministry of Education, in the university, in the respective university. And only when we have that information, then the funds can be made available.
Thank you very much, Minister. I want to go back to Jessie Ramdale from CNC3. I believe that there was a question that wasn't answered. Jessie, could you repeat that question, please?
Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you.
The question was in relation to the measures implemented to ensure the safety of students as it pertains to cyberbullying and that sort of thing. I don't know how interactive the platform is going to be, but in terms of protecting students in that regard, as well as it pertains to their data, are measures in place to safeguard these students?
Mr. Lobel?
Actually, I answered the question. I told you yes. But maybe to elaborate more, we have administrative control over the entire system. We are able to monitor, literally monitor every aspect of it. So we are capable of ensuring that our students have a safe interaction on the platform. I'm not saying that there is no avenue for misbehavior, but we can minimize it, and we can then deal with anybody who uses the platform in ways that it was not meant to. So yes, there are safeguards built in. We have administrative control over the entire system, and we are able to ensure that our students have safe and meaningful interaction using the system. Yeah.
Just let me elaborate a little bit, because just now when I attempted to answer the question wasn't clear. It wasn't clearly put. We have put in place what is referred to as a school-based management system, in which our principals, vice principals, our administrators are supposed to ensure that certain things are put in place by the teachers in terms of supervision, proper supervision. When we talk about bullying in our schools, it is something that we have taken from the America system, the term bullying. However, the incidence of indiscipline and violence in our schools, I have been on record as saying that those incidents have been on the downtrend, simply because of the things that we have been able to put in place. However, it must be understood that if there's one incident in a school that is highlighted in the media, the impression is given that the entire school is at fault. We have in excess of 700 schools in our education system. And our information is that indiscipline and violence exists in only about 1% of our schools. That is the information, the empirical data that we have been able to get. And it will tell us that our efforts are succeeding in terms of minimizing indiscipline and violence. You notice I'm using indiscipline and violence instead of bullying, because I am sure that in our school system, our teachers, our administrators, our principals are doing everything to minimize this level of behavior. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We go to 103 FM.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon.
Minister Lovell, I know you outlined your measures.
Could you identify yourself, please? Good afternoon.
3 FM.
Repeat, we couldn't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Kira Chandu from 103 FM.
Thank you.
Yes. My first question is for Minister Lovell. I know you outlined your measures in terms of virtual learning. Could you give us a bit of a concrete timeline, because persons will be wondering how soon their children can get onto this platform. Some already have access, some don't. And my second question, will consideration, Minister Garcia, be given to perhaps compressing the syllabus to an extent to allow for learning in a shorter space of time? Because you did say that if the situation does not remedy itself in a certain amount of time, we have the possibility of compressing the academic too.
In terms of a timeline, I'd be very happy if they log in now. If they stop listening to me talk and they go and log in now. We are actually ready and waiting for them. So the timeline is literally now.
And the second question, I think this is very simple to answer, because we have had precedents where this is concerned. As I indicated before, in 1964, we had this happening, and our teachers have been asked to look at the syllabus and ensure that the syllabus is taught and that it is taught effectively. It might mean doing some extra work, and I'm sure that our teachers will be up to the task. Being a teacher myself, I'm aware of the sacrifices teachers make and the hard work that they put out. And I'm sure that if it comes to that, where we have to compress 3 terms work into 2 terms, I'm sure the teachers will be able to step up to the plate so that our students will be able to benefit from what is being offered.
Ministers, I think you all will be happy to know, I just got this from your staff members, that since this media conference started and you spoke about the school learning management system, 100,000 persons tried to log in.
Very good.
Hello.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
We now go to Luke Titi.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Here. What happened? I just had a question about teachers. Will these teachers to be paid if schools don't reopen until September? And there's also a few substitute teachers who haven't been paid for the year so far. Will these payments be processed at all?
Okay, let me deal with the question. Again, let me refer to what I've said early on, and I think Dr. Francis also alluded to it. A school is viewed by us not only as a building, as a physical structure, but a school is also part of students, teachers, parents, and in fact all those persons who perform whatever duty he or she is called upon, and that will include the ancillary staff. Therefore, if the physical structure is closed, we want to ensure that education continues. And if education is to continue, we want to make sure that our teachers are paid. And I want to give you the assurance that our teachers need not be dismayed. They will be paid their salaries. And I'm sure that they are going to add value to what is being done so that nobody can say that the teachers are lazy. Secondly, with respect to the second part of your question, what was it again?
Substitute teachers.
Or substitute teachers not being paid. That is one of the things that we are looking at. Our finance section of the Ministry of Education is busily engaged at ensuring that all those teachers or all those persons who perform services to the education sector are paid. Once you work, it is our view that you must be paid.
Okay, we move to 91.9.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Vern Extavo is the name, 91.9 FM, based in Tobago, but we represent for the country. Just quickly, we have just noting on 100,000 people logging in now. How stable is that system and how much is the maximum capacity for persons logging in? And further to that, I have one listener who had a comment that they have not been paid for CXC January exams, doing their supervision of exams and stuff like that. They wanted to find out what about those payments for persons who adjudicated for CXC exams in January. Those two questions, please. Thank you.
It is, by our metrics, very stable. When I asked at the ministry how many persons it could carry at the same time, I was told 1.4 million. So we are very happy that 100,000 people have tried to log in, and our servers can carry that load comfortably, to my understanding.
Okay, your second question pertaining to those persons who perform duties as invigilators or supervisors at the January CXC examination. Again, as I said before, as I said earlier, and I will repeat, if a person works, that person has to be paid. And this ministry is doing everything to ensure that those persons are paid. Incidentally, this media conference was called principally to discuss the effect of COVID on the education system in terms of the opening of schools, in terms of the examinations and how that will affect the exams and so on. What I have noticed is that a number of questions have been asked. We are very happy to answer those questions, but I would prefer if we can focus a little more, not to discard the other questions, but focus a little more on what we are doing and the effect of this virus on the education system.
Thank you very much, Minister. There's a question on SBAs. A parent wanted to know about SBAs. Form 4s would have been in the process of doing them or expected to start at this time. What's the situation concerning SBAs?
Well, no decision has been taken to change the format of the SBAs. I know that one of the things that CXC is saying, and that would be that SBAs should form an important part in the assessment of the students, whether they pass the exams. In fact, one of the things that we have to have more discussions with our regional counterparts where that is concerned is because CXC is putting forward the position that in order to assess our students, instead of the students having to write paper 2, which is the long paper, the assessment will involve the SBAs and the paper 1, which is multiple choice. But again, we are having discussions, we are engaging our regional counterparts, regional ministers of education where this is concerned. But to answer the question directly, there has been no change in the requirements of the SBAs. We want to make sure that the purpose of the SBAs is met and that our students are able to ensure and do as much as possible so that they will be able to pass the exams. And this is what the SBAs really, school-based assessment, they will be assessed by the work that they have been doing. And I know from personal experience that a number of teachers are assisting the students where their SBAs are concerned. So once the students do their SBAs, once they engage the assistance of their teachers, there's no need to be afraid.
Thank you, Minister. TV6.
Good afternoon, everyone. Urvashi from TV6.
Good afternoon.
Minister, given that you're saying that discussions are ongoing with to get devices as well as internet access to students, could you tell us what percentage of the school population is without either an access to device or access to internet? And my second question is in relation to attendance. There seems to be a problem with attendance even when physical schools are accessible. Do you have any plans in place to ensure that students do access online material, they do their assignments, etc.? Thank you.
In terms of the first question, I had already stated that our rough estimates were that perhaps as many as 60,000 students may not have access to a device or a device of their own. It's very difficult at this moment. It would be very difficult at all to have a perfectly accurate picture of the number of students. But that is our rough estimate. That's the number that we are working with, which is a very large number. In terms of ensuring that students access the platform and make use of the educational material, I'm not a fan of the big stick approach. I'm a fan of moral suasion. I'm a fan of getting students to understand the significance of their learning continuing even during this period, and encouraging students, encouraging parents, encouraging stakeholders to make the most of what material the ministry has available. So we do not have any plans to compel students. We don't have any plans to try to force students. The Ministry of Education is in the business of teaching and learning, of educating, and this is really a teachable moment, not just in the narrow sense of teaching students, but in the narrow sense of all of us understanding how vital education is to the students themselves and to the development of the nation. So we are going the path of moral suasion. We are going the path of trying to persuade people, of trying to encourage people by trying to ensure that education that is available online is not just mundane, it's also interactive, it's interesting, it's exciting. And that is the methodology we're going to be using to encourage our students to make the best use of what is available in front of them right now.
All right, the second part of your question with respect to access to the internet. There is a large number of persons, and I say large because if you have about 25 to 30% of persons who don't have access to the internet, that is a cause of concern. But just let me share with you some of the discussions that I've been having with my regional counterparts, the regional ministers of education, who have also told me that one of the problems that they are experiencing is the fact that a large number of their students in their schools don't have access to the internet. In fact, the Barbados Union of Teachers, I have a document here where they have written to CXC outlining the fact that if CXC is insisting on online testing, they must take into consideration the fact that in Barbados, as in Guyana, as in Jamaica, a large portion of the school population just don't have access to internet. And this is something that all of us are trying, we put our heads together and trying our best to ensure that our students have that access. And as Dr. Francis said, we are working in Trinidad and Tobago with the Ministry of Public Administration, the Telecommunication Authority of Trinidad and Tobago also, so that we can have that situation corrected. But it is not a situation that resides only in Trinidad and Tobago.
It's actually a global situation.
Yes.
I was seeing reports of the United States where they're estimating millions of children don't have access right now. So it's a global situation that is being dealt with.
Ladies and gentlemen, sad to say we are out of time. I don't know if the Minister of Education wants to say a final word.
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Minister Dr. Francis, who has been a stalwart of support at the Ministry of Education and at this media conference. And we got the opportunity of explaining to the general population what we have been doing, particularly as we face the ravages of this serious COVID outbreak. We want to make sure that our students do everything possible so that they are not affected. One of the things that Dr. Francis has been telling me over and over is that although it is claimed that our students are not affected as adults, we have to take into consideration that our students can be carriers. So if we have in a school, the average student population in a school might be about 500 to 600, we have to be very careful that not even one of those students is infected by this virus. Because if that is the case, then that student can infect so many others. And that is why at the Ministry of Education, we are doing everything possible so that our students and the entire school population will be free from the scourge of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ministers. And we've come to the end of today's virtual media conference. But before we go, we wanted to let you know that NIBDEC, on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, is inviting tenders to manufacture cloth masks as government implements measures to slow the spread of COVID-19. And they are targeting interested individuals, sole traders, and firms. Please check the daily newspapers from today for advertisements, which will provide additional information. These masks will be distributed free of charge to the public. Tune in tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for the Ministry of Health's media conference. I am Donna Cox, Minister of Communications, and thank you for joining us today as the government continues its efforts to flatten the curve and beat COVID-19. Stay home, stay safe, and may God bless Trinidad and Tobago.